All right, everybody, what is going on? We are back for the first time in a minute. We're going to talk about something today that is usually the type of thing I like to talk about on this channel, and it's a discussion about Julius Randle and the discussion about uh, the quote unquote mismanagement of your talent and your assets on your team. As we've seen with my first video, that was kind of the premise of the whole D'Lo video and things like that. And it's kind of a thing that I like to talk about because it's an interesting discussion to get into, because it kind of reveals how people talk about and think about basketball and what they're actually watching on the court when they're watching games, and just like how narrative based basketball discussion can lead you to some weird places. And so, just to start off with Julius Randle, he's playing absolutely terribly. And like, I'm not going to argue otherwise that he's not playing terribly. Um, a lot of the stuff is on him that's going on in New York right now. You know, we got the weird body language. The effort is waxing and waning, which is kind of what we get from Randle sometimes. I've watched him over the years, a lot of games, like probably more than most, if not all, people who aren't related to him. And you know, we have this thing where he can get a little surly, a little moody on the court, and you know what I'm saying, have some bad body language from time to time. And that's kind of what we're seeing, and it's kind of compounding the things that happen with the whole thumbs down to the crowd, and just like general, like, you know, he don't look like he's all the way there right now. Um, in the video I made a couple months ago, I talked about his season last season, whether or not it was a fluke. Uh, I was concerned about the jump shot in particular, not necessarily the regression in his 3 point shooting, because like I said in the video, I didn't think he was that good of a shooter from like 3 point distance. Of course, we had to take into account the empty gyms, and you know, just people not being there and how that affects a shooter like Randle specifically, because he's not a traditional shooter in like form and like the function of his jump shot. There's a lot of moving parts, and if the atmospheric like pressures change a little bit, you could see how his jumper could have tapered off a little bit. But I was particularly worried about the shot selection, and not necessarily him making a decision to shoot the ball from where he was shooting the ball, but more so how the offense generated shots for him, especially like in the mid range, because he was shooting a lot of contested mid range jumpers and things like that were just going in. You know, he had a lot of confidence, they were going in. But I never argued that like these were good shots. Like, the problem I always had with that stuff in particular is uh, he wasn't playing the way that kind of got him to where he was already. Because if we look at his career thus far, excluding last year, he wasn't a jump shooter. He's a downhill attacking like type of player, right? His best function on offense is getting the ball in space, or getting the ball with space around him to kind of attack a mismatch with a big that's probably either slower than him or weaker than him. And that's kind of where his main offensive utility lies. And then we have the other things with his shot creation, where he generates a lot of threes and things like that. But that's based off of his ability to get into the paint and kind of cause havoc, right? So last year was not that guy. Like, there were some instances of it, but mostly he was relegated to like being this high to mid post guy, surveying the defense, and then just kind of making a decision from there. Now, in theory, like having Randle in the mid post, my phone just went off. Having Randle in the mid post, surveying the court and stuff like that is something that does work. We've seen it work, but it's not. It shouldn't be the like basis of your entire offense, because as we've seen, he's not a good enough shooter to do that, and the team around him is not good enough shooters in any respect, or like good enough play creators to warrant that kind of consistent creation. But it's kind of a thing where the offense became that because it was so successful last year. Like, the offense was pretty okay last year, but I didn't think it was like I don't think anybody would argue it was a good offense. Like, a lot of shots that were just going in, and we were like, hey, how much of this is the empty gyms? How much is this and that? But the thing that was mostly problematic about it was it turned him from being an attacking like downhill player to like this side to side and backwards type of player, which is not the kind of player you want Julius Randle to be. The ideal mix for a Julius Randle type of player, specifically, well, I can't say a Julius Randle type of player because there aren't many players like this dude in particular. Because, like, he's, what is he, 6'8", like 260, and he's just, like, super fast. He's super strong. He's not very athletic vertically. So what you would hope was, and what my hope was with that video was that he would take the increased confidence in his jump shot that we got last year, and he would apply that to the already, like, power forward mismatch and, like, center mismatch skills that he had already. Because, like, if we look at his time in, like, New Orleans and his last year in LA, most of his buckets were in those kind of situations where he's attacking mismatches, where he's either playing center, which he's not doing nearly enough of this year. Now, I know we can talk about, you know, some of the defensive slippage you get from Randle when he plays center because he's not really a paint protector. But if you want to maximize his offensive utility, he cannot only play, like, I think it's what is it, 2% of his minutes have been a center, 5 maybe. I have the number somewhere. Now, it's not, okay, so it's 9% at center according to Basketball Reference. And then, like, you go to NBA.com and it says he's at, like, 20%, but then he's at small forward for, like, a fourth of his minutes. And it's just a lot of perimeter-based stuff that can work for stretches. Like, I'm not saying that he can't be the guy that he's playing as, but you don't want him to be that guy for 48 minutes. So what this offense has done, it's put him in a situation where he's out further on the perimeter. And if you look at any of the offensive possessions that he's on, that he has the ball, he's surveying the court, it's usually 3-4 people, like, parked in the paint, because unfortunately the Knicks don't have another guy that can consistently draw attention away from what Julius Randle is doing, right? So in turn, we get a lot of these step back buckets, side step jumpers, and all of this stuff that he's not naturally inclined to do. Like, he worked himself to be that guy last year, and as we've seen, like, it hasn't held up, right? And so you get this thing where people were getting on him, like, his first year in New York and, like, parts of the second year, where they were like, oh, this dude, all he does is drive and spin, and they was calling him Beyblade and all this other stuff. But, like, he's attacking an initial advantage, right? And as we've seen in all of these possessions, even in games where he's cooking, like, the paint is just a mess. It's multiple people. Nobody's respecting the shooters that he has on the floor because he plays with the starting unit, and none of them are even, like, quickly level shooters where you kind of have to respect them. Like, RJ Barrett is not, like, his numbers look the way they are, but nobody's worried about RJ Barrett particularly, like, killing them from outside. Like, you'll live with a RJ Barrett 3 as opposed to a Randle drive any day of the week. So it's a lot of cheating off to where he can't, like, he doesn't have the space to operate in the way that will optimally, like, get the most out of him. And it's like, these aren't excuses, like, he's been bad. But if you want to maximize Randle, you have to get him more in power forward and center type actions where he spends more time around the rim. He's not around the rim nearly enough anymore to, like, justify like, his offensive role and usage. But a lot of that is this roster construction is not very great. There's not anyone that can consistently make the defense pay in a ball handling situation. Like, you have your Burks and your Fourniers who can get hot and they can do certain things over the course of, like, a game or two, but they're not a consistent threat to make plays for others at a high level, and they're not a consistent threat to be, like, these pull-up shooting guys or these dribble drive guys that will create pressure on the defense that would free up Randle to do the other things that got him here. Because before he got here, he was a 60% true shooting percentage guy, and a lot of that was because he was getting rolls, he was getting easy duck-ins in the paint, he was getting a lot of putbacks, things that he's generally good at because he has good touch around the rim. He's strong and he can dislodge people, and he's faster than people, so he can kind of use off-ball movement to kind of get to these spots. And there's not enough of any of that going on. In the last couple games, he's been kind of doing it. Like, but the problem is he's a jump shooter now, and he's never been one, and he shouldn't be one. He, what is it? Let me see. So 14% of his shots from 10 to 16 feet, 13.8% of his shots from 16 feet to the 3-point line, and then to the 3-point line, and then he's shooting 33% of his shots are 3-point shots. And that's just that shouldn't be any power forward splits, let alone Julius Randle's, because like I said, his main offensive utility is getting downhill and creating havoc, whether it be getting all the way to the rim or driving kick situations. Like we can just talk about how the offense itself does not create any of those type of advantages for him, because like I said, it's standstill. He's in the standstill. A lot of this is his fault because he's meandering to places and he's not setting great screens. He's screening like a person who knows they're about to get the ball, as opposed to screening to free up people and kind of get some chain reaction stuff going, because there's no reason why Randle shouldn't be killing people in the short roll. There's no reason why he shouldn't be doing that 5-6 times a game, playing 4-on-3 and just causing havoc like that. But it's just not a part of their offense. It doesn't happen often enough. Like, even the games he's cooking, I'll have the footage up. Like, all of this stuff is just, it's difficult shots. Like, it's difficult shots, and sometimes he just has to make miracles happen. He made miracles happen last year with that offensive system. Like, it just is what it is. So he's been playing terribly, of course, but a lot of this is, I don't know what this weirdness is from the fans. Like, he carried y'all to the playoffs last year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if the idea is that, like, if you think that pushing Randle out is going to, like, pave the way for, like, a RJ Barrett to come in and, like, be that guy, that's like, if I'm RJ Barrett, I want Randle to be there as long as possible, just so they don't start seeing the holes in my game that I have. Because, like, everything that Randle is, like, kind of struggling with, RJ Barrett is kind of that guy in a lot of respects, except he's not as good of a playmaker as Randle. He's not as good of a ball handler as Randle. He's not. He's just not. And, like, once all of his shots are not catch and shoot threes, what does his percentages look like? Like, RJ has a lot of warts, and so if you think that just Randle stepping out the way and is going to pave the way for him, you're going to be having this same conversation with RJ Barrett in a couple months. And, like, I don't think any of you guys want that. Like, I mean, he's a good young player, but he's a play finisher. He's not going to be a guy. He has some things where he can come off pick and rolls and he can throw the lob and things like that, but that's not, like, high level creation things. If you got a little probing ability, then you'll be able to do that. But all of the other type of passing that bends defenses that Randle kind of does, RJ doesn't have that quite yet. But the main thing is that since Randle has been here in New York, he hasn't had a point guard that can dribble, pass, and shoot. Quickly is the closest thing he's had to it, and, like, if you look at their advanced metrics, like, they're the best when, like, him and Quickly are, like, sharing the floor pretty much in a lot of the permutations of the lineups that we have. Like, together, just generally, I think they're just, like, a -1, like, slightly, which is, like, hugely better than, like, a lot of these combinations you want to put them in. Then you put them in 3-man lineups with certain people, and then it becomes a positive thing, because that's an offensive player that the defense has to respect on some level. And he can pass well enough, and he can kind of probe well enough to kind of free Randle up to do some of the couple other things that he needs to do. Now, I think it's been interesting this last couple games where, like, people are like, oh, Randle's not shooting anymore. He's kind of giving up on the team like that. And what I'm seeing is he decided that, hey, I don't know. I'm not going to say he decided, but it looks to me like he's like, okay, since I'm struggling like this and people are like, oh, you know, whatever, he's taking the shots that are available, because the shots that he's taking are not shots that you want most people shooting. Like, you barely want any good shooter to shoot no shots. And, like, people are shooting terrible, but that's another discussion for another day. But he's taking the shots that are there. He's taking the spot up threes, and then there's been some pick and roll creation that we've seen the last couple of games. He got a duck in, I think. Well, he was running in transition, which is another thing that is just baffling, that he isn't getting out on the wings. But again, he's usually the guy that's controlling the ball in those situations, and he doesn't have the opportunity to get out and run like he needs to, like a Obi would with the second unit and things like that. But like it's not a thing where they don't have anybody that can do it, but the starting lineup is a weird amalgamation of players, and they don't run, and they just play generally slow, And it's just a weird thing how they have two wholly different identities on the team. And he fits better with the bench identity than the one that they have with this methodical hold the ball and read and react offense. The bottom line is there needs to be more urgency from Randle, and there needs to be more urgency in the play calling. Like I said, a lot of the roster limitations kind of hinder that. Now, a lot of that is them putting all their chips in Derrick Rose basket, who also isn't really a play creator from a passing standpoint. Like, you have to respect him and things like that. But we saw it in the playoffs last year. Like, they were content to just let him score, like, because they knew that he's not going to bend the defense in a way from a passing standpoint that's going to make it really matter that much. But either they need to find whatever, if they're looking to build around other people they can find, but you can't just go, this is what, like 5 years now, 6 years, they just haven't had like a point guard. Like, I don't know any team that's going to be successful for a long period of time that they don't have a dribble, pass, and shoot guy, or the dribble, pass, and shoot guy is your power forward that's not really that good of a shooter, but he's a good dribbler and passer. Like, I don't know, roster construction is weird. Randle hasn't been playing great. But I've seen some signs in the past couple games that either he's going to start taking a back seat in that term where he's going to, like, he's just going to shoot less, which might be a good thing if other people step up, or it could get even worse than it is now. You see the clips of him sitting apart from people on the bench, things like that. Like, I don't think there's any, like, beef on the team or anything like that. There's still moments in the game where you see they still, like, you know what I'm saying, they still rocking with each other. So I don't think it's going to get bad in that respect. But the offense needs ways to create more advantages for him. He can't be the only guy creating advantages within the offensive system, like in the starting lineup specifically, because as of now, he's the only one that can consistently do it, and he's the only one that they have do it, but it's not anything that's drew up for him. It's him just going off pure talent, like trying to get past people and trying to get to spots and just trying to make something happen where there's not, the offense isn't doing him any favors. He's not doing himself any favors either, but like there's some culpability both ways. So they need to kind of figure some things out in that respect. I don't know if I trust Tibbs to actually do that. I don't know if I trust him to do that, because we've seen this before in his offenses. They're always usually like this, where they just become this slog of like, we're gonna just beat you up on defense, and then we're just gonna figure it out on offense, and it just never really lasts very long. And we're kind of seeing that thing here where it's just a lot of wear and tear, and that might be part of it why he became a jump shooter. Like, because like I said in the video, he plays a violent style of basketball, like when he's playing the way that you optimize Julius Randle, which is getting in the paint, knocking people around, and getting the ball up on the glass and getting it in the bucket. And he plays a lot of minutes, so like maybe he made a conscious decision, like, hey, I'm going to start shooting more jumpers to kind of preserve myself for when I do need to do these things. I don't know specifically what's going on, but I do know that, one, he needs to play more center. He needs to get the advantage, the speed advantage that he has, that makes him a useful weapon on offense, even if it comes at the expense of the defense, because he's playing with the traditional center and they're just in the paint, and it's just clogging the paint to where he can't do anything consistently. Two, he needs somebody that can actually take the playmaking burden off of him for stretches, because you can run your offense through Julius Randle 15, 20 minutes a game, that's fine, but you don't want to do that for 35 minutes because he can't shoot well enough to justify it. Other than that, the Knicks probably aren't going to do anything this year as far as making the playoffs or anything like that unless they make a trade. But I think there's an avenue for him to start playing better and the Knicks start playing better, but they have to kind of figure out what they're going to do with this whole heliocentric Julius Randle thing. Because, like, he's not the guy that he was last year, but he's also not this bad of a player. If he's the guy that he was last year, where you find the perfect balance of where he's like, I'd say 65% of him as a play finisher, 35% of him as the guy he is currently now. And that guy is still a tremendously useful player. That guy could still be an all-star if you use him right. Like, there's no reason he can't still be the guy that's shooting 50% from the field and his true shooting percentage is hovering near the 60s. Like, you can't have him shooting only 25% of his shots within 3 feet of the basket. Like, that's just not how you're going to get it done. But I don't know. This was a long rambling video. I kind of said the same thing 87 times, but you know, I'll have a more in-depth video probably later about it. But what I will say is, thanks for watching. Anthony Edwards video coming soon. I'm probably gonna have another assist compilation in between that because I kind of have to get some things because like people dropping Anthony Edwards videos now, like the whole shooting thing that was in the basketball breakdown video. I'm like, this dude been in my bag. But I'm going to talk about things that Anthony Edwards kind of needs to work on, and not necessarily because he's like, he's a bad basketball player or anything like that, but he's working a little too hard, and he doesn't have to work that hard to be even better than he is right now. But we'll get into that in the video. Other than that, I'll see y'all soon. Assist compilation probably going to come out later this week. Then Anthony Edwards video will probably be next week. But other than that, I'll talk to y'all when I talk to y'all. Till next time.